Well, good morning and welcome all. It's a pleasure to be here with so many friends from many years and to meet many new people. It's indeed a delight. Thank you to our chair, Professor Rob Dunbar. I can think of nobody better suited at this time with your Antarctic years of experience and exploration, plus your bipolar Arctic work, as well as your other intrepid expeditions and research to chair this august organization. And I'm very excited to be here. I am very pleased to welcome you to my annual Public Policy Forum as president. And on this particular topic, predicting and preparing for a changing Arctic, particularly at a time when it actually has seemed more Arctic in Washington than ever before. And clearly the Arctic is all on our agenda as evidenced by the great turnout in this room and the tremendous speakers that we're going to hear from today. I'm particularly honored to be taking the helm of this organization from Bob Goodosian, who has served this organization so well and who I have known for many years. He has, I'll note that we co-authored a commentary in Roll Call in 2013 about a new Arctic agenda. So we were thinking about that even a couple of years ago. So I'm grateful to be here in this new leadership role and leading a forum about the Arctic, an area that's ripe for American leadership, both diplomatically as well as scientifically. And this organization, for those of you who may not know as much about it, was founded from some prior organizations by Admiral Watkins some number of years ago, who served with great distinction as Chief of Naval Operations, Secretary of Energy, where I actually got to know him when I was working across the street in the Senate Russell building on the Senate Armed Services Committee staff, and he was the new Secretary of Energy, and he was bringing the rigors of his naval career to reform that somewhat intractable department there. But he's been a great naval leader, a great leader and passionate about oceanography and the ocean sciences, and I feel fortunate to have known him and now to be carrying on with you and many others that great tradition. And though we are very sorry to have lost Admiral Watkins not so long ago, I know that he would be very pleased and very honored by the group that's gathered here in this room today to carry on this work. So thank you all. And as you know, the U.S. is an Arctic nation. And we're going to bring that home here in Washington today, because those of you like Fran Ober and others who spend a lot of their time on the Arctic know that sometimes when we're here in Washington, it's not always clear. But there is significant economic, social, and national security interest in the Arctic. We are already seeing an increase in commercial activity in the Arctic in terms of shipping and oil and gas exploration, which could eventually lead to challenges, disputes among nations, or even more likely, an accident or an incident that requires search and rescue or an oil spill response operation. And it's not just the cargo ships that are traversing the Arctic, as there are also marine species that are making their way between the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans for the first time in millennia, which may have significant ecological impacts as invasive species, as Rob noted. Given the complexity and the importance of the Arctic, this is certainly a critical time for our nation to chair the Arctic Council, which brings together the Arctic nations, of which the U.S. is one, as well as today many observers from China to Singapore. So the U.S. has also become very active here in developing its own Arctic strategy and policies. There have been many important documents issued in the last few years. And just recently, within the last month, the President issued an Arctic executive order in which he articulates U.S. policy for the Arctic. And I'm going to actually read a sentence in that statement because it contains important meaning for our work here today. And it says, the Arctic has critical long-term strategic, ecological, cultural, and economic value, and it is imperative that we continue to protect our national interests in the region, which include national defense, sovereign rights and responsibilities, maritime safety, energy and economic benefits, environmental stewardship, promotion of science and research, and preservation of the rights, freedoms, and uses of the sea as reflected in international law. Now, let's parse this sentence, not because I'm trying to be your law professor, but because there are important statements for our work together. U.S. Arctic policy defines our national interests to include not only national defense and maritime safety, which we would of course expect, but also promotion of science and research, as well as energy, economic benefits, and environmental stewardship. An important connection is made in this document defining promotion of science and research as a national interest. This connection is important as we reframe our work on ocean science linked to critical national priorities and interests. So I leave that with you. We have a great and distinguished list of speakers and panelists here today, and I'm fortunate to have worked with many of you over the years, and I also look forward to establishing some new relationships. We've organized the meeting today to begin with a discussion of the major biogeophysical changes that are occurring in the Arctic. The ability to predict Arctic change and its implications locally and globally requires a better understanding of the major physical phenomena such as sea ice content, glacial melting, and the cycling of fresh water, carbon, and nutrients. Fortunately, we have some of the world's leading scientists with expertise in these fields to discuss the state of knowledge as well as where we need additional research to develop the capacity to more accurately predict these changes. Next, with all the commercial and national security interests in the Arctic, our second panel is focused on the science needs for Arctic operations in a fragile yet harsh and unforgiving environment. I have to learn that we'll learn about the capacity to respond to crises or incidents that may arise in a rapidly changing physical and commercial landscape. In my prior work, I've been part of some planning and exercising for that, and I believe that that's increasingly important. And the science and research done in this community needs to inform those exercises and plannings. And we are the community that is the conduit for that information and for that learning. Furthermore, as commercial fishing, shipping, and oil and gas activities begin in earnest, we will learn about the scientific and predictive capabilities that industries require to operate safely and effectively in the Arctic. And our final panel of the day will discuss why this matters to the rest of us down here in the lower latitudes. And I think we'll learn that it matters more than we've ever anticipated. We will also discuss how we need to fill those science gaps to prepare the lower 48 for a changing ocean, which is being driven by the Arctic and will affect all Americans from the coast to the heartland. In addition to our panels, we will hear from distinguished speakers, including Fran Ulmer of the Arctic Research Commission, Dr. France Cordova from the National Science Foundation. Very pleased that we have both Senators Murkowski and King coming to join us, and the President's Science Advisor, Dr. John Holdren. And finally, we will wrap up the day with a talk by Jack Omerlach of the Alaskan Nanook Commission. Thank you, Jack. I can think of no better way to bring this all home than to hear from someone who breathes Arctic air every day and who has generations of traditional knowledge that needs to be thoughtfully considered as we look to sustainably manage this complex and changing environment. I expect and encourage robust discussion and debate about what is known, what needs to be known, and how we can garner this information. I also know that in a gathering like this, a lot of the best discussions occur in the small sidebars and the opportunities to converse one-on-one. I will say that my father, who passed away, unfortunately, on my second day on the job, this job just 2 weeks ago, but he long believed one of the lessons he passed down to me was, it's the network. And although he spent a long career at IBM, he didn't mean the computer network. He meant the personal network, because that's how things get done, especially here in this town. It's the connections and the relationships that you build. And so I believe that that's very important, and I encourage you all to use the time here today to do that. At the end of the day, I hope that we will together have learned a bit more about how science-based decision-making, which is called for in the President's Arctic Executive Order, can inform development of sound policies by government, industries, and individuals. On a personal note, I feel privileged that I will get to visit the Arctic in coming months to Alaska with the Joint Ocean Commission on which I serve. And in years past, we're going to post the forum presentations, video summary on our website, www.oceanleadership.org. Please be in touch if you have questions or just to introduce yourself. I personally welcome your feedback either today or send me an email. I'm, as you know, on a very steep learning curve here, so I'm looking forward to learning from each of you and working with you on the future on where the ocean science community can serve as a critical link, connecting science to policy, providing information, expertise, and predictive capability to protect and support our nation. So, let's see, Casey wanted me to ask you guys all to move into the middle of the room and the front of the room so that everybody has seats, because I see some people standing there in the back. So so if you can do that so that the people in the back get an opportunity to come and take a seat. And I want to remind you that if you're a social media type, and I see enough young people in the room that at least somebody got some social media types, be sure to use our hashtag at Arctic Science, hashtag Arctic Science Forum. Okay, all right. Now that we've got everyone, including some of our trustees and board members, welcome to each of you for being here this morning. Okay. All right. Good. And now it's my privilege to introduce our first keynote speaker this morning, Fran Ulmer, who chairs the U.S. Arctic Research Commission, where she has served since being appointed by President Obama in March of 2011. The Arctic Research Commission establishes and promotes national policies, priorities, and goals for basic and applied scientific research in the Arctic. Fran Ulmer has a long and distinguished career, including serving as Lieutenant Governor of Alaska, Mayor of Juneau, a state representative in the Alaska legislature, as well as being Chancellor of the University of Alaska, so also a distinguished academic career. And she's got tremendous experience in the ocean world, having served on the National Commission on the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill, chairing the Alaska Coastal Policy Council, and serving on the North Pacific Andromeda Fish Commission. And I'm sure I didn't hit everything, but I have had the privilege of getting to know Fran Ulmer, and she's a distinguished public servant, and there's nobody better to kick off this event than you, Fran. Thank you very much.